All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be after waivers for week 16 of fantasy football. I think it's week 16. At this point, this should be your semifinals. This is the money week. Quick housekeeping note for next week. No promises because I think it's a Christmas week next week, and I don't know what's going to go on with that. The good news is I will be playing for money in my main money league, regardless of what happens this week. So that's like a pretty good incentive for me to actually scrub the numbers. And if I scrub the numbers, I might as well do a video. But again, like last year, no guarantees about anything on that one. I want to see if I have anything else written down here. That I see. I don't. So before we get into stuff, or we'll talk about like some theory, because that's kind of the point of the channel at this point. So Travion Henderson, he goes for 14 for 148, 2 touchdowns, 3 for 2 for 13. That's 29.10. And your scoring settings may be a little bit different than mine. And then over here we also have like Tyrone Tracy, and we'll talk a little bit more about these guys later. 15 for 70 and a touchdown, another receiving touchdown. On that, like 76% snaps. And I bring this up because like these are the two guys that we've been talking about where it's like, hey, you want to go for upside versus the other guy that's going to be like closer to your 40-degree day because they're going to be like more of the dirty work back in Ramondre or Singletary in this case. So like that's the spike when it comes down to it, when it comes to those guys. And then like quote unquote trusting the process, like we're talking a little bit about fantasy, how fantasy works. Just because you got it right doesn't mean it'll happen again. Just because you got it wrong doesn't mean it won't happen. Like that part of your brain that tells you like that guy burned me, don't do it again, or something like that. Like we all have that one when it comes down to it. And this is like the gambling component of fantasy football. So like in my high school league, I got bounced this week in the first round. This is after not winning last week and not getting the bye week. And this week was a shootout, so like I don't feel as bad about this week as I did the week before. But I rolled Adonai Mitchell in my high school league for the bye week. This week he goes 9 for 6 for 58 and he gets a touchdown. And then Darren Waller, I also rolled for upside in my high school league, to get the bye week. 54% stats, 8 for 7 for 66 and 2 touchdowns. So again, we can kind of guess some of this stuff, but like ultimately it's kind of out of our control. It's just can I guess the process that gets me there, the thought process behind it, the theory behind it, if it's still there, like roll it again, and that's the gambling component, the hard part where it's like, if I just roll one more time and then I'll win, and it's there sometimes. It's also not how probability works because there's no guarantee it's going to necessarily pay off. But again, like if you're shooting for some of those outcomes, if it's there, if the guy's the number one in an offense and it's a bad offense, it'll still eventually happen. We'll talk about some of these guys later on, but I just want to bring all that stuff up when it comes down to like trusting what the idea behind getting some of these spikes weeks is, and then even when you're wrong, knowing that like that same idea is going to give you the better chance at predicting some of these guys than just like rolling some of your lesser valuable players and expecting that you're going to get like the right outcome. And especially with the semifinals and trying to get cute on some of those guys that like may have the ability to win you a league versus those guys that like you're playing for a 40-degree day and you're hoping that like you can get that just off of like really ugly type of scenario where like a guy falls in the end zone because he gets a red zone carry or something like that. So anyway, week 17, getting your rosters ready. You should have already been preparing your rosters but I know like, sometimes you just limp in and you have to like do it like retroactively. And that's how we're going to be looking at it with some of these guys. So, defenses, even if you're playing this week, like probably should be, stashing that defense and then, start throwing those guys off your roster that like don't necessarily aren't going to help you, aren't going to be able to help your opponents. Most of your leagues are probably about 4 guys left that are going to be playing for anything. So like those are the only guys that really matter. So like if none of the guys in your league are going to be rolling those guys, like, yeah, you can do some pretty interesting stuff when it comes to like stashing your cuffs or stashing your upside guys, blocks for next week, and your defenses, especially your defenses. So week 17 defenses, Lions and Vikings, and we'll talk about like JJ McCarthy a little bit later in this one, but like that's a Thursday night game, so never trust Thursday night football. So like that would probably like lower them down the line. Also, the Lions will be playing in Minnesota, so that's another thing. Like tend to want home team defenses over away game defenses, if that makes any sense. And then right there, Texans are probably a set and forget defense going up against the Chargers. Again, they're going to be on the road. It's a Saturday game. Saturday games don't bother me quite as much as Thursday games. But again, this is going to be on the road. So like, even though they're set and forget defense, like I probably would rather them be on the bottom of my bench than out there in the wild, and I probably would be going matchup shopping on some of the other ones out there. So Steelers going to the Browns. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but for the time being, like, yeah, hey, there's the Steelers if you want to do that thing. Saints going to the Titans at this point. Like, I probably be rolling like the Saints against the Titans if they're going to be available. Jags against the Colts probably doesn't going to matter who the Colts quarterback's going to be at this point. So the Jags would be one that I would be definitely looking at. Tampa Bay going against the Dolphins. This is one that I didn't write down. I'm just looking at right now. Don't really know who the quarterback's going to be for Miami at this point, so that would be an interesting one. Another one that we don't really know who the quarterback's going to be is going to be the Jets. But all these games, these defenses are going on the road, so like there you go. Seattle, they're set and forget defense going against the Panthers. The Giants going up against the Raiders. May not know who the quarterback's going to be for the Raiders at this point going forward, and that would probably be about the extent of it. And like Rams, if they're available, they're set for a defense. But these are all going on the road at this point to get it done. But like those would be the defenses I would be looking at, and primarily you're probably looking at the Saints and the Jags. The Patriots would be the main ones, and maybe the Giants if I really missed out on everybody else when it comes down to it. All right, let's get into everything else. 49ers, and again, this is one of those things like the expectation that we're going to get a shootout going up against the Colts is probably not going to happen at this point. Still expecting we're going to get the shootout going against the Bears. No difference in the running back usage overall. Wide receiver usage, and this killed me in my high school league at this point with Slick Rick at this point. Like, probably just should have rolled him. 7 for 6 for 96 on 58% snaps. He does look like he's going to probably be done for the rest of the season at this point. Like, hip drop tackle, it looked like, and re-aggravated that PCL. So if you're in those deep enough leagues and you're gonna be like trying to go dumpster dive that low, like Kendrick Bourne would probably be the guy that I would expect to be stepping into that role. You also had Jennings had 2 touchdowns in this one. I think there were 2 red zone touchdowns at that. So there you go. And then Kittle is going to be Kittle for the rest of the season. I don't think I have anything else other than like if B-Rob is available, like you're cuffing with the expectation that like you might get lucky going into your chip or something like that. Let's see. Bears are going to be up next, and we can match up shop on this one when it comes down to it. Like Green Bay, this is what I have written down my notes. So San Francisco and Green Bay look like really good matchups at this point. So with Micah Parsons going out with that ACL for the Pack defense, probably would be betting more that this is going to be a fantasy friendly game than like an ugly drag it down the dirt type of game. So now we can start getting a little bit fun when it comes to the Bears toys in week 16 after waivers. So running back usage overall, like Swift, he did have the 2 touchdowns in this game on 56% snaps. 3 red zone opportunities went to Monongahela and 2 went to Swift. If you're wondering about that, so like if you're be guessing, chasing those running back usage probably would keep Monongahela in that like RB2 range at this point. So if you're wondering about all that stuff, like you'll touchdown dependent RB2s. Wide receiver, a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Bears. So Rome first and foremost. So like he did, I guess, try and play in this one, or he didn't, whatever, in this one. So it does look like it is maybe going to be a stretch fracture at this point, and it says like week first sits out first week 16 practice at this point with that foot. And that's what the news is going to be. Like he may be shut down for the rest of the year. This is all other stuff that we were tracking. Equal and opposite reaction. You get DJ Moore with 2 red zone touchdowns. So like that would probably be the guy like first and foremost that I would be going after. Right now, Luther Burden. Right now, you see that like, ankle. So he comes in 39% snap, 7 for 6 for 84 in the game before he goes out with that ankle. So that would be like the next guy up that I would be expecting. That you could have been tracking with Rome being out. You're still expecting that like. Olamide Zacchaeus at 82% snaps is going to be the beneficiary of Rome being out. And here's your but, like we're still tracking Colston Loveland being a league winner in week 16 and week 17. Now, week 16 becomes more interesting because of the Marco Price and ACL. And then Cole Kmet pops up with, estimated practice report, ankle and knee at this point. So like, yeah, really interesting Colston Loveland with those vacated targets going someplace in 2 games that could turn into a little bit more fun when it comes for scoring at this point. Down to it. All right. Bengals, not a real football channel. So like, very disappointing. This is probably the biggest reason why I lost my high school league with Joe Burrow in this one, doing 25 for 39 and 2 interceptions in this one overall. Like whatever is going on with him, it says like we'll start rest of the season. You do you when you want to be running these like 2 good matchups when it comes to the the Dolphins and the Cardinals potential shootouts. It didn't happen this week, but again, like that's why I say like generally going like, hey, they're not always going to work out, because if we could predict everything ahead of time, like Vegas would make a whole bunch of money, and everything. Why would be what would be the purpose of playing the game? So like when we're looking at all this stuff, so like yeah, there's still potentially good matchups on the table. If you have to be chasing some of those spike weeks because you don't have those type of rosters that are going to be going out there. Let's see, running back usage overall. Chase Brown on his 62% snaps. Both red zone ones to him, so like that's what I would be looking at when it comes to these guys down the line. Up T Higgins, no news on the concussion at this point. I imagine, like I said, like they're trending more and more to shutting guys down in the season. We'll talk about some of those guys later, so would not be surprising on this one. Sivas again, like 89% snaps, didn't get it done, one target. Overall, like everybody disappointed in this one. So like the process would be generally still the same with Gesicki, even though he disappointed on that 57% snaps and they were playing from behind because they were losing. And I bring this up because maybe there are other guys that I would be chasing besides Gesicki, but he would still be in that range of like, can I predict like a top 5 type tight end week with these next 2 games that are going to be going on out there. Now, this will be heavily dependent, I would say, on who the quarterback is going to be for Miami, because maybe we could talk about like Zach Wilson being the quarterback. Maybe he'll be able to score some points. Like if it's Ewers, I don't think I necessarily would want to be chasing that. If it's Tua, maybe the game could stay in that direction because of how bad the Bengals defense is. All right. Rolling down here to the Bills. Let's see. And there's not too much to talk about when it comes to the Bills. That's, I think, like too fantasy relevant. The biggest thing is Brandon Cooks was at 34% snaps. I think he had like 3 targets. He didn't get any of them. Gabe Davis was out, not interested in any of the wide receivers when it comes down to these guys. If you're wondering about like your Keon Coleman shares, 56% snaps, no targets. All the fun comes down to Dalton Kincaid doing 36% snaps, 4 for 3 for 34 in the game. And then fantasy doesn't care about us like it's fickle mistress. So Dawson Knox, after having all those weeks of potentially being rollable with Dalton Kincaid out, 64% snaps, 4 for 3 for 37. But, and here's your but, there's your 2 red zone touchdowns when it comes to Dawson Knox in the game. And then Jackson Haas, 44% snaps. Like, doesn't really matter. He's blocking tight end. He's a rookie. All right. Broncos up next right here. So RJ Harvey pops up with a rib at this point, and I would probably be leaning towards him not playing this week if you're wondering about that, because they went out and they signed Cody Schrader. And I don't know anything about him, other than like, I think he was like a D2 guy, and then he played at Missouri, and like 6-year COVID guy, with all that stuff. I did look some up, did look him up, did do some research. He plays special teams. He has like 4 special team snaps. That means that like if he's going to be active, they're expecting to use him. That's why I would expect him to be active. And then this is roster construction stuff that's leaning towards RJ Harvey missing at this point. So like if you're guessing, you're looking at like full bell cow Jaleel McLaughlin, I guess. Out of all these guys, I guess that would be the way that I would be going with these guys. And then Beatty is probably going to stay in that like receiving back, like 2-minute drill type. That's how I would see it be breaking down, at least for a week with RJ Harvey out. So probably more of a block than like I want to be guessing on this one. And then the other thing is in the game, let's see down here, there was a red zone vulture. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, let's see. Moving on to your wide receiver room. So Marvin Mims, he gets knocked out with a concussion. He's in the concussion protocol. I think he came no concussion for him. He went in he came out, got evaluated, went back in. And then Pat Bryant, he the guy that we were tracking, like getting the uptick, inactive with a hamstring at this point. So at this point, that would probably move Troy Franklin back up to rollability. And there you go. It happens. 50% snap, 6 for 6 for 85 and a touchdown. If you're guessing with all that stuff that are going to be out there. All right. Don't really care about the Broncos tight ends at this point. And then your matchup shopping. Week 16 does look very interesting. Week 17 is going to be very unpredictable at this point. So like I probably would be getting a little bit deeper when it comes to you can be looking at rolling like Troy Franklin again next week. All right. Who's up next? The Browns are going to be up next. And we'll start off with not our boy Sanders at this point. 100% set, 18 for 35, 177, 3 picks, 2 for 24. in this game against Chicago, and then 5 sacks on top of that. So like, yeah, I probably would be betting against him in certain matchups like week 16 and week 17 if you're going to be doing that stuff. I don't think it necessarily helps the toys again. And then you get Dylan Sampson being out. This was a little bit interesting. And Travion Williams comes in, like, good football player. He's a special teams, like, third down running back, like Amir Abdullah type guy. 33% snaps in the game because of that. So he comes in. So didn't get like full bell cow Judkins at this point. And then, if he's not going to get like red zone opportunities because the offense isn't good, there you go. That makes it really easy. Week 16, week 17, you're chasing the ability for him to fall in the end zone. And then outside, like, there's your Jared Jeudy, 96% snaps. Again, I don't really care because I don't know how much you're going to be able to track like passing usage outside of like bad matchups. I don't know if week 16 or week 17 is going to be bad matchups. Cedric Tillman all the way down to 12% snaps in this game. And then the other thing, this is like more dynasty related, 68% snaps for Isaiah Bond, 4 for 2 for 89. So probably more of a stash, in your dynasty leagues or something like that, like more interesting for next season for the Browns than like maybe you're going to get a spike. You got to be in like, your deep leagues when it comes down to it. And then tight ends with David Njoku being out with that knee. Harold Fanning gives you your tight end 40-degree day, 14 for 7 for 48 in the game. So like that would remain like the guy that I'd be rolling out of all the Browns. It would be him at this point, even over Judkins. All right, Buccaneers. A lot of fun stuff on this one. So we'll go first to the fact that, like, not a real football channel, but I will just say I got to scroll down here. More bad coaching for the Buccaneers. Like that, I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. So, trying to predict week 16 and week 17 is going to be very difficult when like they do appear to be like that poorly coached. So I will bring that up first and foremost. Now, Bucky Irving, and this one I got to scroll down here. So, 3 red zone carries went to Sean Tucker. He tugged on one. Bucky had 1 red zone carry and 1 red zone target. Now, I imagine that this is because of the shoulder that he has, but even if the shoulder is quote unquote better, it does not necessarily mean that Bucky Irving is going to get that short yardage work, the goal line work that Sean Tucker got. That may remain consistent. That would downgrade your Bucky Irving. And then at this point, like, you're trying to get like not goal line touchdowns going to Bucky Irving. That makes it like harder and harder for him to be able to give you the type of week that you want down the line. That's how I would look at that overall. Let's see. Rashad White was consistent 42% snaps, and then there's Tucker right there at 12% snaps with that vulture tuck. Wide receiver room, and this is where it gets like really fun. So Mike Evans is back. He does 55% snaps, 12 for 6 for 132 in the game. Buka falls down to 64% snaps. Godwin goes all the way up to 96% snaps in the game. Right there. And then McMillan was at 46% snaps, and then Tez Johnson was down 22% snaps. So the idea behind all of this is like Godwin's the one guy that you could probably trust whatsoever, just because of snap share. He's going to be on the field the most. I expect that Mike Evans' snaps will go up, and he's going to be Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin's going to be Chris Godwin. So like it would definitely move Ibuka down at this point with the 64% snaps, and now you're hitting the point with Ibuka of whether or not like Jalen McMillan is going to eat into Ibuka, and then Jalen McMillan's going to be the wide receiver 3. Like that's how I would see them shaking out down the line. So you may get one more week of Ibuka in that role. So like as a wide receiver 3, but like you're kind of playing with a little bit of fire when it comes down to that. And then like week 17, like I imagine Ibuka, if he keeps that job, is going to be in that like wide receiver 3 range. So like the league winner no longer has that tag applied to him overall. And then I will just bring this up right here. So like Payne Durham with K. Dot out, 65% snaps. So I'm not going to say like when you're right on this one, because sometimes I don't need to know how the sausage is made. But 29% snaps for Devin Culp. He does like 1 red zone target, 1 for 1 for 6 and a touchdown. So there you go. If you were in like those deep enough leagues that you like chase something like that out there. All right, Cardinals. I will say like, the league winner tag may be on the Cardinals at this point when it comes to the ability to win your chips at this point. So predictive bench, Jacoby Brissett going up with the Texans. He still gets it done because sometimes it doesn't matter. 3 passing touchdowns in this game. Atlanta, and then the Bengals definitely. Now that may be a little bit more contingent on like if Joe Burrow gets shut down and stuff like that when it comes to the Bengals. So be paying attention to that one. But expect that you can get 2 more top 10 type fantasy weeks out of Jacoby Brissett in those games down the line. Now, other stuff you got, where's he at? Bam Knight right there, Zonovan Knight. He done for the year IR with that ankle, only on 2% snaps in the game. And then we can start talking about like Michael Carter being at 80% snaps overall. My money, if you're gonna be getting a little cute, is you may get an Amari DiMercato week, before the end of the season, week 17, something like that. So like that would be where I would be leaning to if they want to be looking at anybody, with Trey Benson like being done for the year right there. So that's how I would look at it. Probably more block stuff than I want to be chasing any other running backs outside. Like I have drug myself to the semifinals, and I need a running back, and then Michael Carter, probably over DiMercato. But it would not be surprising me that they give DiMercato more of the look. He's supposed to be the trustworthy back, even though like he did that not trustworthy thing earlier in the season. So wide receiver room right now, Marvin Harrison, like no news right now, except I guess expected back this year. Who knows what that's going to mean? So if you got your league winning Michael Wilson shares, you're crossing your fingers and you're hoping that Marvin Harrison does not come back, but you're probably going to be rolling Michael Wilson at this point. 11-5 for 54 and a touchdown in this one. And then Jalen Brooks, where's he at? Remains somewhat in line with what we thought we were going to do, 71% stuff. So he would be the wide receiver 2 at this point. How I would see it shaking out if you're going to be in those deep enough darkened up leagues that you're chasing wide receiver 3s in good matchups, like the Bengals matchup in that case. On that one, and then Trey McBride, unicorn right there. I'll give you your victory lap. 92% snaps, 13 for 12, 134, 2 touchdowns, probably if you needed him in that week. All right. Chargers right here. We'll go Justin Herbert. We'll look at that. So like week 16, we're rolling all the toys when it comes to the Chargers that we can get a hold of at this point. Like the expectation that will turn into a little bit of a barn burner down the line. Hampton, second week back after that ankle. Snaps remain the same, 36% snaps. 15 for 61, and then 1 target for 4 yards in this one. The only red zone opportunity went to Hampton in this game. So Vidal doing 64% snaps, like this is the dirt, and then Hampton's getting the gravy. So that's what it looks like, and I imagine that's going to remain consistent for the rest of this year. You probably can roll both of these guys in week 16 because of that Dallas matchup. That's how I would see that. But like again, going back to these guys right here with Henderson and Tracy, obviously Kamani Valdell is going to be like the lower upside guy. He may be slightly safer just because of the snap share of getting some of like the dirt. And then, Amari Hampton is going to be the guy that like, has the ability to have the higher spike week because when he's on the field, they're giving him the opportunity and he's going to get the red zone stuff. All right. Wide receiver room. And you can see like right there, this Kansas City game was already predicting to be an uglier game just because of how Kansas City has functioned all year. That's not surprising. I'm not worried about the wide receivers. In this one, week 16, I'm rolling everybody. It just becomes an issue of like who's going to be the everybody. Quentin Johnston right there says inactive week 15 with the groin. And now we can start getting a little fun. So the snap share for Trey Harris, 85% snaps. So if what's his face, Quentin Johnston is going to be out in this game, like that would upgrade Trey Harris immediately into wide receiver 3 status. If you're in the right league that you got to be tracing all that stuff. The other one, and I can just bring this up here right here with this is probably more like next year dynasty stuff. So Keandre Lambert-Smith, he does get a red zone opportunity on his 32% snap. So like they go someplace, opportunities go someplace. We know that. It's just trying to be able to guess that in the right week and get cute and doing that stuff when it comes down to it. All right. And then I will be rolling Gadsden out more than likely in my main money league right here. Clear my voice. And then right there, he's down to 52% snaps, 5 for 4 for 61 in the game. None of that is really surprising to me. Again, you're tracking this Dallas opportunity overall. And I did write down he had 70 air yards on his 52% snaps of this 5 yards. So that's good stuff. That's tracking that's the ability to try and predict that you're going to get something more like week 7, that spike week. It is there. Unless you have the ability like when you want to be pivoting to like Loveland or Waller or something like that, trying to go that direction. I could see that overall. All right. Chiefs, get this out of the way. So Patrick Mahomes done for the year, ACL, LCL. Supposedly, he'll be ready for the start of the next season. Who knows? On that one, Gardner Minshew, our boy, he jumps up immediately into like, yeah, it could be really fun for week 16 going up against the Titans. Definitely 2 quarterback league type of stuff that you're going to be doing that stuff. Running back usage did have a little bit of a flop, and I don't know how much I would be chasing any of this outside. It's like, the Titans. So Pacheco, 46% snaps. 5 red zone went to him. 2 red zone on Hunt's 49% snaps. Two carries or 2 red zone opportunities, 1 carry, 1 target went to Hunt in this game. So like there was a little bit of a red zone flop when it comes to. I don't probably want either one of these guys unless I really have to be chasing all this stuff, especially with the downgrade at quarterback. And then Brashard Smith, he did have 5% steps. He did have 1 red zone opportunity on top of that. Wide receivers gets, I'm not chasing any of these guys, but like if you're in those leagues that you have to, Xavier Worthy goes in the concussion protocol, and then Tyquan Thornton goes in the concussion protocol. It was somewhat interesting to me, like with Worthy going in the concussion protocol, I could see getting the uptick to Thornton. But if he's in the protocol, like I probably don't care. Like your deeper, darker leagues, this is like dynasty related. It probably would not be surprising that they finally give like 4th round pick Jalen Royal a shot, because he hasn't really done anything all year. I could see him just slotting into that. And then if you really, really, really want to, and I wouldn't, Juju 52% snaps, like that would be the next guy up if you're gonna be chasing any of that stuff. I think moving to the Colts, and we'll go to Grandpa Phillip Rivers right here. He almost pulls it out late in the game, like a miracle victory in this one. And it says right there he's going to start again for week 16. This is more of a wide receiver problem. It probably gives the Colts a better chance to win with him on the field because he can manage the game in this one. But like he's not going to push the ball vertically down the field, and that's what like some of those guys are going to be able to do. So like I would downgrade like all your wide receivers, regardless of the San Francisco matchup at this point, and the Jags matchup at this point. Like he's not going to be able to put those put the ball down the field vertically, so it's going to lower your downside of all your wide receivers. So that makes it really easy when it comes to all the rest of those guys. So I'm not quite as interested in the rest when it comes down to all that stuff. And then supposedly Anthony Richardson can play at this point. He's still on IR. All right. More guys being shut down when it comes to the Redskins. Jaden Daniels done for the year with that elbow at this point, so he's going to be done. And then Marcus Mariota, like I probably can keep guys on track if you really need him to. Week 16 probably not good. Week 17 if you want to be planning that far ahead. So C-Rod, he was out in this one with a groin, and then we get like more Bill at this point. Like I don't know what's going on with fantasy football. 52% stat, 18 for 96 and a touchdown, fumble not lost. You can see that 16-yard touchdown on top of all of that. How consistent you want to be, and then with C-Rod right there getting full practice in on Tuesday, probably downgrades. Chasing Bill on the wire at this point. And then, hopefully there are guys out there that said like, hey, vacated opportunities, I'm going to roll Bill. And then they got like that 15.6 if you were deep enough leagues that you got to be chasing that type of stuff. If he's available. And then they did bring in Nichols on his 49% snaps, and he did have a late fumble as the Giants were trying to get the football back. So like, who knows on all that stuff. Not a lot to talk about when it comes to the wide receivers in this one. Let's see, tight ends, not stuff that I'm interested in with Zach Ertz being done for the year. John Bates does 69% snaps, like 1 for 1 for 19. And then there's Sanat, like 57% snaps, 1 for 1 for 36. I don't know if you're going to be able to get a spike that like Sanat's going to do anything. And then Colston Yankoff before going down with an ankle. There's that 27 or 13% snaps in the game that we were already expecting that we were going to get an uptick from him. So being able to predict like what's going to go on with another tight end being knocked out, I don't care. That's the long and short of that. When if you're chasing the Redskins tight ends, like I don't know if you're going to be able to predict that overall. All right, Cowboys. So Javonte right here, 29% snaps. He got knocked out of the game with a shoulder. He did come back in the game in the second half. So there you go on that one. If you're going to be blocking these guys, because I don't know how much I would be chasing this if I had to against the Chargers. Malik Davis, 53% snaps. That would be the guy to be blocking at this point. It says like added as top, whatever. That would be what I would be looking at in this one. And then if you went and you picked up your Ryan Flanois, 64% snaps, 6 for 5 for 40. Again, like with guys coming back, I probably wouldn't be rolling him out there in this one in the first place. So there you go. All right, Dolphins. So the news is that like all options are on the table when it comes down to like whether or not it says right there, danger of being benched when it comes to the Dolphins. I would not be surprised that they want to take a look at Quinn Ewers for the Dolphins at the end of the season. I don't know if they're going to do it yet. I would be slightly interested in, this is more like real football stuff, like if Zach Wilson has gotten better at football since the last time we saw him with the Jets. Like Wouldn't be surprised if they also take a look at him. So just be paying attention to all that stuff. Running back usage overall, like the idea that like Devin A-Chain was going to miss 80% snaps, like he is the wide receiver too, 6 for 6 for 67. And then usage flop that like didn't happen. So Ollie Gordon, and I guess this is, I wrote this down, an ankle, I think again. Yeah, ankle on his 12% snaps, 2 carries, nothing. And then Jalen Wright, 8% snaps overall in the game. So like if there is any missing of time, I imagine that like it's going to be a split backfield. Who knows on that one? And then I just have right here written down, I hate fantasy right there. 54% snaps, 8 for 7 for 66, 2 late touchdowns for Darren Waller. There you go. Like could have used that last week, but again, this Cincinnati game is going to be really interesting because of how badly they've been able to cover tight ends, and if this is somewhat of a shootout, and we're talking like mid 20s points a game or points a piece between the Dolphins and the Bengals, yeah, you're going to get like some type of predictive week out of Darren Waller if he's going to be available and you want to be rolling him in your semis. All right, Eagles right here, and there's a little bit to talk about with the Eagles. So Barkley pops up with a neck stinger, like misses practice today, and then there's Bigby right there, limited on Tuesday with an illness. My thoughts, like if you're gonna be chasing Saquon being out for a week, would be like the upside play to go full bell cow would be Will Shipley. And then if you want like your RB2 that's going to be limited because like Shipley's probably going to be part of the game too, it would be Bigsby. Like that's how I would break these guys down. So if you're more interested in blocking, I'd probably be going after Shipley if I don't want to see that upside. If I'm worried my opponent is just going to roll out like an emergency RB2 or something like that, would be Bigsby. That's how I would look at those two guys versus their upside. And then how fantasy functions and why it's important. Sometimes like there's Dallas Goedert right there. 7 for 6 for 70 and 2 receiving touchdowns. There's a guy in my main money league that rolled Dalton Kincaid over Dallas Goedert, and he got bounced because of that. And I bring this up as like generally tight ends are very dependent on touchdowns. So if there's a guy that's scoring touchdowns and he's getting red zone opportunities and he's in a good enough offense to continue to get red zone opportunities, that's just the easy way to be rolling guys out from a tight end perspective in fantasy and just not overthinking it. Because you're gonna miss those big spike weeks because like they're not producing because there's only gonna be so many guys that are like unicorn or unicorn adjacent in fantasy. All right, Falcons in this one, and I just have say it with me right here when it comes to Bijan, and we'll get to Kyle Pitts. So vacated targets tend to go to running backs first and tight end second. 11 for 8 for 82 when it comes to Bijan, and then we'll go over to Kyle Pitts, the best fantasy tight end week of all time. 12 for 11 for 166 and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, vacated targets tend to go to running backs first and tight end second, and we saw it this week with Drake London being out, and there you go. And then the other thing is vacated targets, like they got to go someplace, and they didn't go to Darnell Mooney, and this is why like tracking some of these guys is fun. 94% snaps for David Sills, 10 for 6 for 78 in the game. And there you go. Bob's your uncle when it comes to tracking all those guys. Now, Drake London right here, like whatever hopeful means that Drake London is going to play in week 16. And even if he plays, you got to wonder like how close to full speed he's going to be and what the snap share is going to be. Like that type of stuff, I would be worried. And this is the Saints have looked better. Not the Saints. What am I talking about? Arizona would be a game that I would be looking to be rolling out Drake London if he was available. But like I would be worried, and I'm going to be worried because I have him in my main money league if he is available, like whether or not I'd be rolling him out there. All right. Giants, let's move on to them right here. So I did see this with Jackson Dart. He had where's he at? Three red zone carries went to Jackson Dart in this game. 9 for 63 also. So like that's all good stuff that we want. Minnesota is going to be not a particularly good matchup, but overall, like yeah, if he got you here and that's the guy that you got, he is rushing the football again, and he just get red zone opportunities, and that's like the long and short of what you're looking for when it comes to your possibility of your league winning quarterbacks in this one. And then I'll start off with Devin Singletary. 24% snaps, 5 for 13, 1 for 1 for 1. And where is it at? One red zone carry went to Singletary in this game. All right, here. And then over here, Tyrone Tracy on his 76% snaps, 15 for 70. 1 touchdown, 3 for 3 for 27, and a touchdown, 2 red zone carries, 1 red zone target, and he tugged on that, and there you go. So it's more of a matchup issue with Tyrone Tracy at this point than it's going to be really worried that Devin Singletary is going to be taking over for him right now. And then I'll just bring this up. I did see Cam Scatterboot is out of his cast or whatever at this point. So like that's how it's going with him. If you're worried about next year, we can worry about next year. Outside of your dynasty leagues. And Theo Johnson, and I did go look up the air yards. It was rather low. 4 for 3 for 72. So like probably could be looking at potentially like the number 2 in an offense for like one more week when it comes down to him, if you're going to be chasing that stuff, if he's available or something like that. Not the best matchup for Theo Johnson when it comes to the Vikings. But remember, like that type of defense, live by the blitz, die by the blitz, like you could get like spike weeks off of any player because like of one play. All right. Jaguars. So we'll go running backs. Well, I guess like Trevor Lawrence had a particularly good day. Five passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown in this game, if you're wondering about that. All right, Travis Etienne. So there's a little bit of if, buts, and maybes when it comes down to this. So we'll go to Tootin first. So I went and looked this up. He did have finger surgery today. He's expected to be back before the playoffs or something like that. That's what they did. And they also went out and they signed DJ Dallas. He's more of a special teams guy. So that gives you an indication of that. Tootin did have a red zone target on his like 21 or 18% snaps in the game. Did have a red zone target. He did score on that one. So when we look at ETN, and he's already a league winner. That's the long and short of that one. 12 for 32, 4 for 3 for 73, 3 receiving touchdowns on 3 red zone targets. So that's not sustainable, I would say. That's like very unlikely to repeat itself. But overall, like I imagine he's going to take a majority of what Tootin was doing, and he's going to absorb it, which means that like you're going to have more opportunities for touchdowns because Tootin's not in the game. And then LaQuint Allen, he did have a red zone target, so you may get LaQuint Allen to eat into any of this. It probably doesn't change anything. I'm going to be rolling ETN if I have him week 16 and week 17. I'm not going to be thinking about that one because he's a league winner. So Brian Thomas at this point, like yeah, he's back to like I probably should trust him. 3 red zone opportunities. He tugs on one of them. That's going to be the long and short of that. Jacoby Myers is going to be your 40-degree day. On this one's 87% steps, 7 for 5 for 71. And again, I'd be rolling him against the Denver. Like Denver's got a good defense, but like that's the 40-degree day, and you're still chasing the spike with Thomas. And then where's he at? Parker Washington was back. Snap share was down. Not surprising. 45% snaps. And then De'Ami Brown was at 8. None of this is really like interesting to me. And then where's Tim Patrick right there? I was kind of expecting that maybe the snap share would stay higher, 42% snaps. All this is brought up to go talk about like if you're going to be chasing Brent Strange. 82% snaps, 3 for 1 for 26 in the game, 2 red zone targets on top of that. So like yeah, it could happen if you're in that like that deep enough, dark enough place that you got to be tracing your Brent Strange. All right, Jets, a lot of stuff here. What comes to your quarterbacks? No news on Tyrod Taylor to start off with. The other thing is Justin Fields was basically another like healthy scratch at this point overall. So they go out there and they roll out Brady Cook, and not surprising, 3 interceptions at this point. So like there you go. If you're expecting that you're going to get any difference out of that, probably more like I want to be rolling the Saints or anybody else against them, especially if it's not Tyrod Taylor. You did get Isaiah Davis to come in. This was not a vulture, but he did score late in the game. On his 38% snaps. If you're wondering about that. No news on Garrett Wilson, so would not be surprised. It says practice window still isn't open when it comes to him. That's 6 days ago. We'll go to Adonai Mitchell, breaking my heart right there on this one. So like I would not trust this because of the quarterback situation, but like 9 for 6 for 58 and a touchdown. Saints, I would imagine, might not be the best game in the world, and then the Pats are also going to be a team that can take him away if they really want to. And then if you're in your deep enough leagues that you're wondering about, where's he at? The Eagles with Mechie right there, consistent at 74% snaps. This is real football stuff. Probably for Dynasty, it's going to be interesting, like who the quarterback's going to be, because they're going to have like 3 particularly good wide receivers next year. And then the other thing when it comes to the Jets, if you're tracking all this stuff, Mason Taylor missed with a neck. So I wouldn't be surprised that he's not going to be back either for the rest of the year. All right. Lions in this one, and there's like some stuff to talk about like with this one. So these are the type of games, and we'll go right to the Sun God on his 18 total targets. So the Rams Lions game did project to be a higher scoring game. Did not necessarily uh, disappoint on that one. So there's your 18 targets for the Sun God. And then JMO, he does 9 targets, 9 for 7 for 134 and touchdown. Now, how we get there and why it's like kind of important to like kind of track this stuff. So that's with like Laporta being out and those vacated targets like not going to the tight end at that point, and then we could go like, well, did they go to the wider or the running backs? 7 targets for Gibbs on that one. So like you get the consolidation of targets in a game that goes together. So like that's just generally how I would look at that. And then Tesla was at 63% snaps, and then Raymond was actually a little bit higher. Or no, he wasn't. 17% snaps, but he was back in the game like 1 for 1 for 20. I didn't see him in the box score. If you're wondering why I was looking at that. All right. And then the other tight ends. So I was expecting that like Frisker was going to be the tight end, and he wasn't. It's the Zystra or whatever. Like I don't care that, but those 2 wide receivers, that's what I would be looking at the most. And then you're just tracking the offense in good games like Pittsburgh. Who knows? And then who knows when it comes to the Vikings? So like I would still be rolling out your JMO and your Sun God because like they're not going to have a tight end that really is going to be interesting to me. All right, running backs. So first and foremost, before I get to the Packers, so because of the Micah Parsons injury, it's going to change the complexion of the offense because the defense is not going to be able to do what Micah Parsons was doing. These 2 games, Chicago and Baltimore, automatically like probably are going to trend towards the higher scoring because of that injury right now. So there you go. Running backs. So Josh Jacobs is leaning towards the knee not being better, so he may end up like missing a week at this point. It says like on the news significant limp and bracelet on his knee. So now we can start talking about like Emmanuel Wilson being back on the menu in week 16, week 17 as like full bell cow at this point, and then that's with like Chris Brooks being dealing with a chest injury on top of that. So like if he was going to eat in, so like you might get like full bell cow when it comes to Emmanuel Wilson. And then if you're wondering in your dynasty league, Marshawn Lloyd re-injures his hamstring, so he ain't coming back. That's the long and short on that one. And then the wide receivers for the Packers will go down to Christian Watson first. So he gets knocked out on his 41% snaps with a chest. And it says like held out of Tuesday session in this point, and they are playing right there on Saturday, if you're wondering about that. So if you'll be tracking your injury news on this one to know who's going to be coming in. I did see the comment today about Ibuka and Michael Wilson, like who would I be rolling? And again, like tracking your injury reports, and like the moment I saw that like Marvin Harrison was a DNP, I would have probably been like trending towards chasing Michael Wilson over Ibuka. But if Marvin Harrison would have got like a limited in, I probably maybe for 1 week would have been looking towards Ibuka. That would have been my thought process behind it. But they're probably both in the general category of the like if Marvin Harrison is back, I probably would downgrade Michael Wilson in that wide receiver 3 range, and then this is last week, and then Ibuka would probably still be in that wide receiver 3 range, and it'd just be a matter of like guessing like who I think is going to have the higher upside. And at that point, I probably would have leaned towards Michael Wilson anyway, just because he has just looked better at this point. That's how I would see it. So anyway, Matthew Golden was back up to 35% snaps, 4 for 3 for 55, trending in the right direction. Drayden Reed was at 65% snaps in the game, and then Romeo Doubs right there at 76. This is all in line with what we were kind of tracking at this point. And then Dontavian Wicks, ankle misses practice Tuesday, 42% snaps, and then you get the uptick when it comes to Luke Musgrave. I probably don't care about like 6 for 452 in the game if I'm going to be tracking those targets. And this is all contingent on Christian Watson missing and then trying to guess where the targets are going to go. Probably the main guy that I would be looking at is like Jaden Reed as the main guy I want to be rolling with him going to be out. And then like Romeo Doubs may end up being like red zone target guy. You might get a Matthew Golden spike week, long and short of that, if you're in like your deep enough leagues that you want to be tracing that stuff. And you also get like a Wicks being out with an ankle. All right. Scrolling down to the Panthers. A little bit of a usage flop overall when it comes to the running backs, when it comes to the Panthers. And they, did get upset by the Saints in this one. So 42% snaps went to Chuba. 9 total opportunities went to him. 1 red zone went to Chuba. 2 red zone went to Rico right there on his 60% snaps, and more importantly, like 17 total opportunities. This Tampa Bay game looks like really good for both Rico and Chuba. Whatever direction you want to go, it does look really good. And then week 17, I probably wouldn't be rolling anybody, but that's how I would be looking at it. And then wide receiver room, we'll talk about like Tet real quick. 84% snaps in this one. If you're chasing that one, probably the guy, and this is not really surprising that I would want to be having if I'm going to be rolling anybody at this point, would be Jalen Coker. But like that week 16 matchup looks pretty interesting with Tampa Bay at this point down the line, like 4 for 60 and a touchdown in this one. And I guess those were touchdowns that were he was out wide, not running like slot snaps on go balls, if you're wondering. All right, Patriots here. And this is one of the things I've talked about before in the past when it comes to the running back usage. Like Henderson's speed is different, and it will put stress on a defense in a way that Ramondre would not. And if I'm a coach, I want the football to be put into the hands of Ramondre on every single play because he doesn't scare me. And eventually I can get them behind the down and distance because Ramondre is going to not get good yardage, and then I can get into like that 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, I can blitz on you. That would be the idea behind it. Travion Henderson's on the field. He can take any touch that he gets to the house, and that's why he should be on the field more, because he took like a 56-yarder or 65-yarder to the house, and that's how you get your 48% snaps, 14 for 148, 2 touchdowns. 3 for 2 for 13, on his, let's see, 9 total opportunities went to Ramondre on his 67% snaps, on his 48% snaps, 17 to Hendo, 1 red zone carry, 1 red zone target, and then for Ramondre, 2 red zone carries for Hendo, and then there's a but to this. Your but is Drake May comes in and gets 2 red zone rushing touchdowns on top of all of that. So, like, what's this mean for the Baltimore week when it comes to the Patriots backfield? Like, he's still going to be like very volatile. That he's going to be able to put together like 56 and 65 yard runs. In a game that it was a closer game against the Bills. So I imagine that he's still going to out touch your Ramondre, but Ramondre is going to be on the field more, just kind of like Vidal and Hampton at this point. So like, yeah, but you are playing with fire. Like you could walk out of your semifinal week with like 4 from Henderson. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go to Ramondre at this point, because like being able to rip off like 56 and 65 yard runs is not something that like happens a lot. But like, yeah, you're going to probably get more snaps, and they're going to be the right snaps when it comes to Henderson, and it's just a matter of like, can he sustain it? And like, that's football. That's the gambling component. Wide receiver usage overall, if you're wondering about like your Stephon Diggs, like a wide receiver usage for the Patriots did not change. Overall, so 4 for 3 for 26 on 50% snaps. So when it comes to Stephon Diggs, the guy, there's Boutte right there, 75% snaps, 1 for 1 for 30. The guy that I guess, like, if I really have to be rolling your Patriots guys, would be still Mac Hollins. He's the snap share guy, and he's getting more opportunities when it comes down to it. Like that, not particularly good when it comes to like predicting any of those guys in their matchups down the line. And I didn't really see anything with Hunter Henry, 87% snaps, 3 for 1 for 18. So there you go. All right, Raiders, and let's see. So first, Geno Smith did not play with shoulder and back, and week 16 says right there unclear. So who knows on that one? You did get your Kenny Pickett playing against his former team, not good. 15 for 25, 64 yards in an interception, and then 4 sacks on top of that. So going up against like a better defense in the Texans next week is like, so if you're rolling any of your Raiders, you're hoping that it's Geno Smith at this point. Would not be surprising that they go Aiden O'Connell. Who knows when it comes down to it. So the only other thing that's like slightly interesting, this is more for your dynasty leagues. Beck was at 81% snaps, 3 for 2 for 17. That's it. And then Trey Tucker was at 90% snaps. Thornton was down to like 19% snaps. I don't care about any of that stuff. And Genty, it doesn't matter because the offense is bad, but he was only like 70% snaps, but he's getting the majority of the work. And if you're rolling, like say Genty, and I will just make my comment, if you're wondering, like I don't think most people have gotten to the point that they're at because they drafted Genty in the offense. So like yeah, if he's your RB2, like hopefully he's not your RB1. You're probably just rolling him because of volume at this point. You're hoping. That's how I would see it week 16. Unless you're good enough that you have the ability to bench him because you picked up some of the other league winners that potentially were out there on that one. All right, Rams, and they're a little fun. They're a little fun. This is more real football stuff. I can tell just from the stats that the Rams are playing really good football. And this game right here, because the Rams won it against the Detroit Lions, right here to bring the scores, because it was like 41. Where's it at? Right there. 41-34 Rams. And why I can tell that they're playing really good offense is because Kyron Williams 54% snaps in this game, and he had 3 red zone opportunities. 2 went to Blake Corum, so Kyron Williams tugs on 2. And so if you have Blake Corum, you can roll him like as a pretty solid RB2 at this point. 2 red zone opportunities went to him on his 46% snaps. The tight end usage where it gets fun is you're looking at like Ferguson in this game, 78% snaps. Colby Parkinson, 86% snaps, 7 for 5 for 75, and 2 touchdowns. And remember that he had 4 red zone opportunities in this game on top of all that stuff. I said, like, it is consistent. This is just usage wise overall. And then down here with Davis Allen, 75% snaps in the game overall. So they're running their 3 tight ends. They don't care. And they're just running the football down your throat, and they're throwing to their tight ends. Puka is only at 56% snaps, 11 for 9 for 181. This is pretty. It's pretty stuff. That means they're rotating their guys, and they're getting done what they want to get done. Devontae Adams, 9 for 4 for 71. Probably going to miss with the hamstring in this game. Probably doesn't matter. Other than those vacated targets are going to go to running backs first and tight end seconds. They're already getting a lot of usage to their tight ends. In this one, he did have 2 red zone opportunities in this game. To those 14 receiving touchdowns, those are going to get absorbed by somebody, and I'm going to guess it's going to be a tight end. So you're getting to the point, if you really, really want to, because of the snap share, like, not going to be surprising that Terrence Ferguson is able to have a spike week in the next couple weeks, because if the snap share's up and they're using guys in a certain way and those vacated targets need to go someplace and they're getting the red zone, it could happen. It probably just definitely upgrades Kobe Parkinson if he's available. All right. And then if you're wondering about wide receivers, I don't know if you're going to necessarily get like a 1-to-1 replacement for DeMonte if he's out. Konate Mumfield, who is a 7th round draft pick, he's up to 44% snaps. I imagine they're going to Frankenstein it with him and Tutu, and then maybe Jordan Whittington. I think he's more of the replacement for Puka in this game. He was back, and he was up to, or down to 6% snaps. I guess he was out with a back injury, and then where's he at? Xavier Smith, maybe he's going to be the guy. Like, yeah, they're running a lot of tight ends. So, like, I don't think you're going to get that replacement for Devontae Adams if it occurs. All right. All right, Ravens does look like Keaton Mitchell's knee was not bad. 39% snaps, 8 for 6 in this one. And then you get Rasheen Ali up to 27% snaps, 2 for 2 for 32, and a touchdown with Justin Hills being out, if you're wondering about all that stuff. Hopkins was out, or no, Hopkins was not out. 1 for 1 for 32. Where's he at? Bateman was out in this game. If you're wondering all that stuff. And then the process, can you live with the thought process behind all this? Like, Isaiah Likely, hopefully nobody rolled him. 51% snaps, no opportunities. As I sit up in my chair. And then we're looking at the Saints. Some stuff to talk about with the Saints. So Tyler Show, this probably, I don't know how much I would trust this outside of 2 quarterback leagues, but like the Jets and the Titans are going to be like really good games to be rolling them. It's more going to be like a toy issue at this point. So no news on your Alvin Kamara last time I looked, or right now when it comes to like, it says knee and ankle, that MCL for week 16. And then Devin Neal gets knocked out with a hamstring on his 32% snaps. Those snaps go to Evan Hull on 32% snaps and Audric Estime on 36% snaps. Not going to be surprising that you get full bell cow Audric Estime. I imagine you're probably going to get like limited usage to him, and then some of the receiving work is going to go to Hull or something like that. These are more block stuff, I imagine, than anything else. I would be wanting to roll these guys out. But the reason why I bring this up with Tyler Show looking better is you can look at rolling the toys. And that's like the bigger thing, is like 2 good matchups. He is playing well enough because they were able to beat the Panthers that you're probably going to get some consistency, which means now you can start talking about like rolling potential running back, down the line depth chart running backs against the matchups. And then obviously if Kamara's back, like you probably could just roll over Kamara if you have him sitting on the bottom of your bench. Wide receivers, so Vele gets knocked out with a shoulder. Mason Timpson goes up to 80% snaps. Probably would not be chasing that if you're wondering. Olave, league winner at this point. That's that you put that label on guys when it comes down to it. Where does it go? And then don't care about tight ends for the Saints. Seahawks, and they get fun too because like they don't care about your fantasy lineup. So Kenneth Walker down to 42% snaps. Charbonnet goes 55% snaps. 2 red zone opportunity went to Charbonnet. 1 red zone target went to Kenneth Walker. So you're not going to be able to predict that. This Rams game theoretically is going to be higher scoring, and then the Panthers game may end up being a game that they can score on when it comes to these guys. But they probably are downgraded to your flex level of being able to trust them. The 2 running backs. I was not able to confirm this with the stats, but I did see that Shaheed. This is the first game where Shaheed was able to route Cooper Kupp at 68% snaps to 75% snaps for Cooper Kupp in this game, even though Cooper Kupp did do a modest stat line in this one right there, 7 for 5 for 46, and then JSN is a league winner. I don't really care about that. Steelers in this one, like the only guy, like if you're rolling like DK Metcalf is like a low end wide receiver 2 or flex or something like that, Jalen Warren was 46% snaps. He had 3 red zone carries. Kenny Gainwell was at 52% snaps. So like the guy that I would prefer out of these 2 guys is give him Kenny Gainwell. 2 red zone targets went to Kenny Gainwell, and then you also had 7 for 7 for 46 on top of all that stuff. And then don't really care about the tight ends for the Steelers. I think if there was a guy that I would like still, and this is probably when they get real coaches for the Steelers, 73% snaps for Darnell Washington, still making it look like he's playing popcorn football with everybody else that's out there. Adam Thielen was at 48% snaps, so I probably don't care about that. And then Texans in this one, this is all fun running back usage wise. So Nick Chubb missed with a rib, and right now, if he's available, maybe you're going to be tracking towards him playing. Woody Marks gets knocked out with an ankle on 22% snaps. Dare, we'll bring up him first, jumps up to 31% snaps in the game. Majority of the work, and this was kind of a blowout, went to Jawar Jordan, 42% snaps, 15 for 101, 2 for 2 for 17. And that's a pretty good matchup. So more of a block than I want to be rolling him out there, because the guy that I think is going to get the usage if Marks misses is going to be Nick Chubb. That's going to be ugly, even though it's a good matchup. That's how I would view all that stuff. Down the line, Dynasty's tough. 72% snaps for Jaden Higgins. That's probably the only thing I imagine. And then because it was kind of a blowout, you get Cade Stover going up to 61% snaps. But Dalton Schultz ends up going up to 79, or he stays at 79. 9 for 8 for 76, and a receiving touchdown. So when you're wrong, you're wrong. Being able to chase, not trying to win your league, but he jumps up to that down the line. All right. Let's see who's next. Fantasy wise, the Titans, I probably would not be chasing them, but you get fantasy being the fickle mistress that it is. Tony Pollard puts together another week against the 49ers. 14 for 104 and a rushing touchdown. And then this Kansas City week is probably no more fun. You had your fun with Tony Pollard. If you've been rolling him out there, I probably would not guess that you're going to get that type of outcome against the Chiefs at this point. And then the Saints might be trending in that direction, if we want to be doing that on top of all that stuff. Don't really care about the receivers for the Titans. The one thing I will kind of talk about, and this is where's he at? A toe injury in the game for Gunnar Helm. He did leave and come back in. Kind of were tracking that this was going to happen, that you could maybe get one of these weeks out of him. 49% snaps, 4 for 4, 49. Did finally scores touchdown. So that's just the non-predictive matchup or nature of fantasy. And then finally, and I'll talk about this real quick when it comes to JJ McCarthy and the fact that someone should punch him in the face, dancing as he's going into the end zone on his naked boot. The Cowboys matchup was always going to be a game that we can have more fun with some of these guys, and he does throw 2 passing touchdowns, and then he has that rushing touchdowns on top of that on this one. So if you're wondering about your running backs, you got 58% snaps going to Aaron Jones, 36% snaps going to Jordan Mason. 1 red zone opportunity went to Mason, and 1 went to Jones, and then CJ Ham did vulture a touchdown. He's the fullback for them. And this one, so if you rolled out your Justin Jefferson, you probably aren't in your semifinals in the matchup that you'd be rolling him. That's out there. 8 targets, 2 for 8 for 2 for 22 in the game overall. And then TJ Hawkinson in this one did have like his best game of the year, 80% steps, 5 for 4 for 66 overall. I probably would not be touching these guys. Giants game may be very all over the place when it comes to being able to predict that game overall, and then like leaning towards Detroit being a very ugly matchup overall when it comes to your Viking shares. So like hopefully you did the predictive play of JJ McCarthy and you got him, and then like I wouldn't be touching anybody else. But that's what I got for fantasy football this week, and like I said, if I get it done, I get it done.